All right, welcome back. A little while ago, maybe it was like 6 or 8 months, close to a year, I don't remember. I did a video on kind of setting up your Model 3 as a track car, accessories to put on it, what changes to make, etc. But now that I've been doing this for, like I said, maybe upwards of a year and have a whole bunch of track days under my belt, I thought it would be worthwhile to go back and kind of understand, like, is it still a good track car? Like, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly about it? And just provide an update to you so you can make kind of your decisions if you're looking at, getting a Model 3 or kind of taking yours to the track or doing something similar. So getting to the bottom line up front, do I still think it's a good car for track days? Absolutely, 100%. If you have a Model 3 and are considering taking it to the track, or you're considering purchasing a Model 3 with the intention of taking it to the track or modifying it for the track, it is absolutely a good experience, a worthwhile purchase. That said, there are some real trade-offs to consider that you should be aware of up front that may go into your considerations. And for me, I jumped in without a ton of experience and purchased a whole bunch of upgrades, just assuming everything would be great without really understanding the subtle trade-offs along the way. So we're going to go through those today. So I thought we'd start with the top of like what is really good as a Model 3 as a track day car. And the first thing is it's just a great combination of track day car and daily driver. Since the Model 3 is basically a sedan, can carry 4 people comfortably, can carry luggage and extra capacity, it really doubles very well. You can use your Model 3 all week for going to work, taking the kids to school, getting groceries, and it'll work very well. Then when you head out to the track on the weekend, it is tons of fun, easy to drive, fast. And so again, great trade-off. And also, by the way, all that storage space makes going to the track super easy. You can fill it up with tons of tools, accessories, everything else you need to make your track day a great experience. While, if you look at others there who are, driving two-seaters, there are definitely a set of compromises they have to work through as well. So another positive about the Model 3 is it's super low maintenance. I haven't done any maintenance to mine. You don't need to worry about oil changes, spark plug changes, engine maintenance, all of that. There just isn't really any to speak of. If you're going to make some modifications to it for the track, really all you're going to be looking at is paying attention to wear on your consumables, such as tires, brake pads, brake fluid. Note on the brake fluid, you'll probably change to a track-specific brake fluid, which requires more maintenance. But other than those basic consumables, and you drive it all week, have some fun with it on the weekend, make sure the bolts don't fall out and the brakes still work, and you're good to go. Of course, one thing worth noting is like the Tesla is a giant computer. So if something goes wrong, you're totally screwed and you're not going to fix it yourself. Like if you get an error message, like that's it. You're going straight to the dealer to sort that one out. So it certainly is not a car you can do a lot of maintenance on yourself beyond the basics of suspension, brakes, etc. Then another plus to the Model 3 is actually its built-in track mode capability. Now, the track mode is a really nice feature of the Model 3 that allows you to see much more data about how the car is performing and also tweak the handling characteristics of the car to suit your driving style. So for example, when you turn on track mode, you can change the power balance between the front and the rear. So it's normally set at 50-50. You can move more of that towards the back if you want and maybe get a little bit of oversteer. I haven't had much luck getting much oversteer into this car. You can dial down the stability control quite a bit and get the computer out of the way, and allows you to kind of get the car a little more loose, not as much as, well, let's put it this way. The computer is still involved and some people don't like that, but you can dial it out a bit. The other thing you can change quite a bit is the regen level. And so the regen level that you're using on the street is actually much less than turning the regen level to 100% in track mode. So you can dial it all the way up to 100%, which is much stronger than the street, turning it all the way down to 0. And there are some trade-offs to this, which I'll get into a little bit later in the video, as how you change the regen level obviously impacts like how it drives, but also has an impact on heat levels in the car, etc. Till recently, I've been running regen at 100%, and it's because I'm paranoid and you think of it as a safety mechanism in case there's a brake failure. All right, so let's, so obviously there's some real good stuff, but let's kind of turn the tables a little bit and look at the compromises with this car. And I'm not going to say they're bad. They are just any car you're taking to the track that is also a street car, you're going to have a set of compromises. The first one to talk through is overall battery performance. And it is a legitimate concern. And so maybe some of this is because I live in a warmer climate. The battery gets warm quickly, but it's something I deal with all the time. But basically what I find is within a couple laps on larger tracks, the battery starts to get warm, power output goes down, and down go your lap times. And so as a point of reference, you've probably seen some of my videos from Arizona Motorsports Park where fast lap times are in the 151 to 152 range. Once the battery gets warm, you're going to drop 10 seconds off that easily. If you think you're going to go out there and pull for a 20-minute session and be doing qualification style laps over and over and over, it's just not going to happen. Once the battery gets warm, your lap times will slow down and you'll keep going. You can still have a good time. But what happens is your session turns into more of a resource management kind of task, like where you can get a few laps in early, get some really good push laps in, get some good times, but then you have to start to manage battery temperatures, etc. And that changes your driving. So that changes your brake points. It changes how the car turns, everything. Arguably, maybe that's a good thing. It's teaching you how to adapt to different situations, just learn how, to work with the car as it evolves. You go out, you have a full charge, and maybe it takes a couple laps to get the tires warm. So by the time your tires are nice and warm, it's possible your battery could be getting warm and its performance could be compromised. So there's a whole lot of things to manage at the same time. I mentioned this before. I think regen settings play a very large role in this. What I've seen is when you have regen turned up to 100%, that seems to be really driving the spike in battery temperatures. And I'll see if I can put some video up of this. But when you start to come into the braking zones and you lift off, you'll see a spike up in battery temperatures as the whole pack turns red on the panel. Then you can back it off, maybe, take it light for a lap or so, things cool down, and off you go again. But regen seems to be a big factor. So I'm going to try bringing regen back to 0 and seeing if that helps just sustain the lap times and the battery performance longer. And I'm also curious to see what type of hit it does to the range. So the other thing to call out on battery performance on top of temperature issues is that, power output goes down as the battery level goes down. And if you look at discharge curves of major batteries, there's roughly steady through the middle of the discharge curve and then drops off. So there's a big drop off early on and then a big drop off at the end. And so that factors into what your driving experience is like. You're managing temperatures, kind of impacting the pack performance. Then you have the state of charge managing the pack performance. And so it just, again, you're not going to be cranking out fast lap after fast lap. It's back to a resource management problem and something you need to think about. So if you're doing your typical track days where you do 20-minute sessions, the lap times you're going to get during your first 20-minute session are going to be quite a bit different than your second 20-minute session. Is all this bad? No, you're still going to have a great time. You're still going to be going plenty quick and you're still going to learn, how to control a car and how to adapt to a changing car. So it's all good, but you just need to set your expectations accordingly for what that experience is going to be like. And this is one of the things that surprised me. I was like, oh, I'll be able to go out and just do push lap after push lap, really kind of exploring the edge of the car until the battery basically craps out, and then I'll go charge it. And that's just not the reality of what happens. My understanding is some of the newer battery chemistries have different discharge curves. So my statements around power level and power output will hopefully be rendered null in time with newer battery technologies, but that's just been my experience with. All right, the next compromise you have to keep in mind is charging. And charging is a real thing, and it is an absolute inconvenience that reduces your track time. There's no other way around it. So realistically, you have to hope that you're near a good charger as well. So assuming you start at about 100% charge, 30 to 50 minutes of spirited driving before you need to find a charger. Depends on the track, depends on how fast you're pushing it, but that's what I found. What that means is on a typical track day groups where you're running in 20-minute groups, you'll get 2 20-minute sessions in, and then you have to go find a charger. You have to fit in driving to the charger, charging, and driving back to get in more sessions of the day. And managing all that can be a pain. And sometimes it's actually not even possible to fit that in without missing a session. What I've found is where the track is, say, 15 minutes from a charger, first a supercharger, first you're very fortunate to be in that situation. But realistically, that is going to cut an hour out of your day. You're going to need 15 minutes to get there, 40 minutes to charge roughly if you want to get it up to a high state of charge to enjoy the rest of your day, 15 minutes to drive back, that's an hour. So you need to think about how that fits into the schedule of the day and if it's worth it. I think the reality is because of the inconvenience of charging that you just simply aren't going to get as much track time gas cars. All right, so given all that, given the challenges, one thing I've asked myself is, would I do it again? Would I buy another Model 3 for this purpose? And the answer for me is yes. When you look at some of the other cars that would make great track cars, but could also be used as a daily driver, high performance cars, you start to look at Corvettes, Porsches, etc. And for me, they just have too many compromises in other ways. They're two-seaters, they can't carry a lot. They're going to be difficult to run around and take the family where they need to go, do work and everything else. So for some, they work out great, but that wouldn't be a good compromise for me. Now, if you want to look at optimizing for track time, really dealing with some of the challenges of charging, battery performance, etc., and still have a really good daily driver, you're probably looking at a sedan type configuration. And I think there are probably some Mercedes that fit the bill there, a BMW M2.
Hello everyone, Jacketing here, and welcome to PhD Racing.
M3, M4, again, probably work really well. And if it's something like you're looking at purchasing a car as a double duty, you may want to look into some of those other options unless you're really wed to Tesla. Now, I think if you're looking at getting more serious, and by more serious, I mean you want to start with track days and then maybe move into some form of competition where that could be hot lapping or even some form of racing, I would say the Model 3 just simply isn't up to the task. Because of all the issues I mentioned above around battery performance and charging, look at your local clubs and understand the classification system, but you also need to look at how long the sessions are and how that would fit into the day. The Model 3 may work for some hot lapping environments where the sessions are only 10 or 20 minutes long, but again, you're going to have to manage some of the issues I described above. So you'll want to make sure if you want to do hot laps, you're showing up with a full charge. You'll have to make sure to, leave time in your session to get the batteries warm and then put in a really good set of laps. I was just looking at my local club and the hot lap sessions are only 10 minutes long. So if you can manage the charging side of it, you'd probably be okay there. But if you actually want to get into racing, I'd say no way. The races I've seen are between 20 and 30 minutes. And given the kind of the performance degradation over time with the Model 3, it just simply isn't going to work in those situations, and I wouldn't even bother. So I kind of see the Model 3 as ending at fun track days and potentially some hot laps here and there. Now, if I want personally, this is a whole other topic, but if I wanted to get more serious in competition, I wouldn't be looking at something like a Corvette, a Porsche, or taking a BMW and modifying it. To me, they're just too expensive. I would start to look at dedicated track cars if I was really interested in competition. And so there are options like the Rush SR. For $40,000 or even Radicals, which I think are in the low six figures, where they're super expensive, but they are designed for the purpose. They're going to be better than anything you could build themselves. And I would personally take a Radical any day at 100 over, a multi-$100,000 Porsche, but that's just me. And that's a whole other topic to get into. So the next topic to dig into is what additional modifications would I make? And so just as a reference, so far I have put on, it's all Mountain Pass performance modifications, and I've done a big brake kit. I've done new rotors on the rear, new pads all around, coilovers, and then suspension arms all around. And so that's pretty much most of the Mountain Pass lineup is on the car. But there's a few other things that I would do depending on time, money, and everything else. And I grouped them into three general categories: safety, cooling, and speed. And so I'll start with speed. Given the modifications on the car and the tracks I deal with, the best path to faster lap times for me is running stickier tires. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I made was buying 18-inch wheels. Currently, I'm running 18s with Goodyear Supercar 3 tires, and these are, I believe, 200 or 220 treadweight tires. Really good tires, great wheels. I love them. Problem is, there are no options found for stickier tires that fit on 18-inch wheels. And so if you want to move to like a Supercar 3R type tire, like you just can't. So 19 seems to be the sweet spot for having a bunch of options at a 100 treadweight tire. And so that would probably be the first thing I would do. And just as an aside, one of the other frustrations with 18-inch wheels is not all the wheels out there fit well on the Model 3, and they don't clear everything particularly well. So even mine are super tight. on the rear parking brake. When the wheels are balanced, if they don't put the weights in the right spot, they will touch the rear parking brake as they go around. So I've had to shave down wheel weights, or I've actually had to shave down the rear parking brake as well, which is just annoying to deal with. And going with a 19-inch wheel will solve that completely. So if you're in the market, I highly recommend starting with 19s. In the speed category, for me, tires are the way to go. Now, I could look at things like some aero modifications, like a rear wing or a front splitter. Personally, I don't think either of these would be particularly valuable. First, when I've looked at the options for both of those out there, I can't get any really good data on how much additional downforce they provide. And on the tracks I drive on, they do have some fast corners, but there's usually a bias towards slower corners, and so the additional aero is not going to be a big help. All right, the next bucket of modifications is around cooling. So I did mention more than once throughout this video that temperatures are an issue, and I'm going to start to address that by playing with different regen settings. But looking for some cooling solutions is kind of the next option. And I would be looking at like a drive unit cooler by Mountain Pass Performance. I've looked at this in the past, but decided not to pull the trigger because I was actually a little worried about a mistake with the installation or running it causing like an oil leak and ruining the entire drive unit. And maybe I'm paranoid, but I just didn't think it was worth it for a little extra performance. The other thing that I'm concerned about is I'm not sure for the investment of, I think they're $890, let's call it $1,000. How much extra performance does it deliver? Does that mean I'll be able to go like 1 lap more, 2 laps more before the battery gets hot? Or does it like solve the problem completely? Right now, that's pretty much the only option on the cooling front that I've found, but it's a category of product I'm definitely going to keep an eye on and would really help the overall experience of the car. As final bucket of modifications would be around safety. I started with the seatbelt, the basic seatbelt like everyone does, but you'll quickly find you are moving around the inside of the car like crazy, and you do gain some core strength, I will say that, trying to keep yourself in place as you're pulling like 1.3 Gs in the corners. But I really enjoy the feeling of being connected to the car, and so what I did is I installed the Schroth QuickFit Pro, which I did do another video on, and this gives you a 4-point harness. It works with the current seat and everything else, and it works pretty well at keeping you feel connected to the car. But I do worry about how safe it is. The reality is the Schroth QuickFit Pro is not designed to be used in the Tesla. The key is for Schroth to certify it in a car, they have to test it with the seat from that car manufacturer, because the concern is that the seat would collapse in an accident. And so while it works, it fits, it feels good, it doesn't give me peace of mind that I haven't made the safety situation actually worse. When it comes to modifications, I've done a bunch of research into this, and it's really interesting to learn how safety systems in race cars all kind of work together. So when you're changing out one piece, like when you're changing your 3-point belt for a harness, you're probably taking more risks than you want to. And so you really just have to go all in and do it right with a set of components designed to work together. And what I'd love to do there is get a full cage, like the one from, I think, Unplugged Performance has a cage that can be put in and then removed, and then a proper racing seat to go with the cage and a proper set of harnesses. That would provide the level of safety that I would like, but also that connection to the car. Well, that pretty much wraps things up here. I hope this was useful. And if it was, I'd love to get your thoughts down below in the comments. If you think I'm on the mark with some of the thinking here or off base, definitely an interesting topic. So leave your comments below and we'll go from there.